Only took 4 tries to make this stream get going right. Alrighty. Beautiful weather, beautiful weather. I'll give it a second here for somebody to come on. We're going... No, we're going westbound. Why is my GPS... Oh, wow. Well, you don't know where you are, do you? Yeah. The GPS is wanting me to do a 360, 270, turn on. Now we're going to go this way. I don't know what made you think that was a good idea. Holy crap. Alright. I am just now getting back on the road from extreme western New York. Heading back on the clock. And this vacation kind of blew up in my face. I had some fun hanging out with my cousin and his family and doing a lot of things out here. Went to a party they have on a lake, and there's a sandbar, and everybody motors out there in their party barges, and a dude sets up a stage and has live music and had a good time. But the part where my wife was there fell apart. Compliments of United Airlines and their inability to do their job. I'm getting up the speeder. Hold on a second. 162. Alright, and we're there. Okay, how this works with me is my dad was an airline pilot. He's retired. So I grew up at the airport, so I understand how airports work, and I am also a retired commercial pilot. So I spent a lot of time at the airport. I understand the ebb and flow of airports. And the state line's coming up here in just a second, New York state line, or Pennsylvania state line. So I have a pretty good understanding of how airports operate, and I have never run into the kind of stupidity that just happened to my wife. Okay, there's Pennsylvania line. Hold on, we got a honk, you know that. And tradition, you know, gotta. Yeah, blueberry orange. So my wife gets to the airport, gets the car parked, rides the bus. We're in Bush Intercontinental in Houston. It's a humongous airport. Had her ticket printed out the night before. She had 2.5 hours. It says EM. Okay, so now we're back in Pennsylvania. And Bush Intercontinental in Houston is a really, really, really big airport. So she has to hoof it to get to her gate. And she gets there, and the person at the counter goes, "Oh, no, your flight's at a totally different concourse at a different gate number." So now she has to whip a 180 and go on a cross-country jaunt back down the concourse, back to the terminal, back to the big train ride to another concourse, way down, to get down there to be told, "Oh, no, you're at this other terminal, this other building, this other concourse." So she gets to hike back down the concourse, back to the terminal, back to the train ride, back to somewhere else. Well, it was on the 4th round when she finally got to the flight, and they closed the door in her face. It said, "Yeah, we don't open the door once it's closed. You should have been here sooner." So my wife spent 2.5 hours hiking around Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston to get on her flight, and didn't make it because apparently United Airlines employees don't know where their airplanes are. My wife didn't make it out here, which sucked because that was something we have been planning on now for quite a few months. I enjoyed being here, but I am not happy about her not being here because there's a lot of things going on I want her to be a part of. We have tentatively planned on coming back in November. We're missing the summer, we're missing grape harvest, we're missing all this stuff, but I think it's an opportunity to go hunting. But I can tell you, we're not using United Airlines. I can tell you that. Wow. So anyway, we're back on the road. I am westbound. I like the sun being behind me. I am westbound on, I think it's I-90, 8090. I just crossed over the border, New York to Pennsylvania, and I got Lake Erie on my right side here, and we are going to Mount Vernon, Ohio, for a pickup that's going to Lafayette, Indiana. The overall driving is about 500 miles. The pickup is at 1 o'clock this afternoon. I got plenty of time to get there. So 1 o'clock delivery direct. And like I said, about 500 miles, and this is paying $1 a mile for all miles driven, which is pretty good. For a van, not for a truck, but for a van, this is good to go. And here we are. Something, I was talking to my cousin. There's a few videos on here about the family farm that's been there, and had an interesting discussion with my cousin. Man, we knew each other. My cousin and I knew each other passing as kids because we didn't really spend any time together. And back in, I think, June, I was here, and I sat down as an adult and got to have a conversation with him for the first time ever. He just turned 50. I'm 57, so we're in the same age group. But that was the first time we ever got to talk as adults, and I actually enjoyed hanging out with him and talking to him. Something that was kind of funny that he and his wife both had birthdays last month. They both turned 50 at the same time, and they both got sick as a dog. And I let them know, oh yeah, that's what happens. The second you hit 50, your warranty expires, everything explodes, and you get sick, and then your joints will start hurting. And of course, every word out of your mouth, you get up, will start with, ah! So I kind of got to laugh at him about that. But I was talking to him, and the topic of solar power and solar electricity came up. And something the state of New York is doing that I was a little taken aback by. They always have this big, this big push for solar green energy, and the state will apparently, and I don't know the intimate details, but the state of New York will subsidize building a solar farm on farmland. Literally make your farmland go away and put up solar panels. They'll subsidize that because it's such a great idea. He had a solar company come and do a test on the property, and they get out their little equipment and they tell you, this area is good, this area is bad. Well, the barn is so big and the sun hitting it from all the sides makes him, for lack of a better word, a solar monster. And he said, unfortunately, the state of New York will not allow a private residence to have solar panels that exceed 110% of need, because they don't want you being in the solar panel business as a private person, the solar power business as a private person, because they can't control you and or regulate what you're doing. Whereas a company, they can, and there's probably some politics involved and probably some cashback and kickbacks involved somewhere in the middle of all that. He said 30% of one side of that barn would give him enough solar energy to do his house, and the rest of it would be energy you're putting back in the circuit. But they don't want that. They don't want you using a standing structure that has no negative effect on farmland because of political reasons. And he was completely taken aback by that. They're okay if you uproot farmland and put panels all over it. But putting it on an already standing structure that has no negative effect on farmland is just a little too much for state government to accept. And I found that a little bit disheartening. The crowd keeps coming and going. I am westbound I-80 or 90, depending on who you look at it, in Pennsylvania, in that little piece of Pennsylvania that's between Ohio and New York here along Lake Erie currently. And I like driving this time of day, especially when the sun's behind me like this. Headed to Mount Vernon, Ohio. So I got to hang around with my cousin and his wife, and his wife's nuts, and she's a lot of fun. We were out at this on this lake. They do this thing on Lake Chautauqua, if you look in western New York, and they call it H2O. And a guy comes to a sandbar about nutsack deep water, and he sets up a stage and plays music, and people walk around and talk to each other. And there was a few hundred people there with their boats. And I got to watch my cousin's wife dance around and drink. She's type A, very outgoing. And she got a little lit up and ended up in the water, you know, and fell down. She had a drink in her hand. She went underwater with the drink, came up, and was getting ready to take a swig out of it. We're like, yeah, hold on a sec. We might want to replace that. It's nuts. Had a lot of fun. But currently, like I said, en route to Mount Vernon, Ohio for a load straight west from there to Lafayette, Indiana, which is northwest of Indy, which on the upside puts me back in the core. So I think things will move pretty quick here, and I'll be on for a while, and I'll work my way back to Texas, and we'll go from there. Anybody got a topic? Anybody got a question? I got a little windy today in monsoon. I got to help my cousin and I guess he's my nephew. Wow, never thought about that. My nephew, the grape vineyards, they have posts, and every once in a while these posts break just from time and age. I got to go out with them yesterday and replace some posts, which this is late in the season. It's almost harvest time, so those grape vineyards are heavy. It has a machine with a hydraulic arm that slams the post into the ground, and then we rewire it and put it back up again. That's when I discovered on the property, they own quite a bit of land up here. He bought another chunk of real estate. He had trail cams all over the place, and I said, you know, what's that all about? He goes, oh, we hunt up here because nobody else does, and there's a bunch of deer. So we have a rural area, lots of woods and lots of white-tailed deer. The population around here is aging pretty rapidly, and the hunters of yesteryear are gone, and they're not being replaced by people who hunt. So the deer population is kind of getting out of control, and that's what I suggested. My wife likes to hunt. She hadn't done it in a while. I suggested maybe I should bring my wife back here during hunting season. They said that's a good idea. They'd enjoy that. So talked to the wifey poo, and she said absolutely. Hey, Butter Z, what's up, mister? Real quick, I just left family farm. I'm heading west on 80/90. We just passed over the New York border into Pennsylvania. Follow this for a while, and I'll pop into Ohio. Headed to Mount Vernon. Shows 2 pallets, total of 2,400 pounds. They don't give me dimensions. I hope they fit. They don't give me dimensions, but I'm heading to Lafayette, Indiana, with whatever this is. I pick up at 1 o'clock. I got 5 hours to get there, and I still I'm going to get there at 11. I'm supposed to be there at 1, but 99% of the time you can get a load early, pick it up early. And I'm taking it to, like I said, Lafayette, Indiana, which gets me back in the core. This overall drive is a breath from the farm to the destination is a breath under 500 miles, and I'm getting a straight $500 for the load, so that's a pretty decent rate for a van. Not a truck, but a van like this. But I had fun being up here. I'm still bummed about the wife not making it. And she's bummed about it too. But like I said, I'm trying to bring her back in November. It's not going to be the sunny days like this in November. But giving her the opportunity to go hunting, I think, is going to be good for her, because it's been a while. I don't hunt. I haven't hunted since the 90s, but she likes to hunt it. So whitetail, that'll be fun for her. Whew. Gas is pricey. I used Upside a few minutes ago to get 12 cents per gallon back, but still, the gas out in this part of the country, I think the sticker was $3.18, and it's like $2.30 something down in Texas. So that kind of sucks, but I'm not going too fast right now. Back to the fuel-saving drive. My cousin has a dog. If you watch the videos I shot here the last few days, he appears as a golden retriever. The dog's about 3 years old, you go out in the yard, which is huge, it's a farm, you can throw a ball down a hill, which gives you a little more range. And this dog will chase a ball. Yeah, like I said, I'm not on. My wife is, so she enjoys it. Hunting. And this dog will run at top speed to get the ball and come back and run around and give it to you and throw it again. And you can throw that ball until your arm doesn't work. Then you switch arms and you throw, awkwardly, and then you get to where you're kicking the ball. And hours later, this dog is not tired. It has no ability to get tired for some reason. So I showed my cousin some videos of remote. You can look this up on YouTube. Remote control cars at a dog park. Those are really expensive, fancy ones, real fast ones. And these dogs will lose their ever-loving mind chasing this remote control car around the dog park. And he's like, okay, I got to get one of those. Just sit on the side of they have a brick wall with this big piece of real estate underneath them. Because I could just sit there and race this car around and, strap his favorite chew toy on top of it. And I said, yep. So I think next time we're up here, we're going to have some fun video. I have never met a dog. You can play with a dog for a while and they get tired. This one doesn't. It just goes and goes and goes. And I'm sleeping in one of the back bedrooms. And my cousin and his wife, they both get up and go to work. And I didn't realize they were both gone when I got up the first day here. I opened that door, and then it was quiet. I cracked the door open, and that dog wasn't 3/4 of an inch outside the door when I opened it. Whoop, dog's there. Hey, how you doing, buddy? We got lucky. We got a ball launcher just for that. If that's, my wife was discussing that, a ball launcher for the dog, which we may send him one just for the heck of it, but get one of those remote control cars. I'm talking about those ones that cost like $800. I've seen them in action, and they are they're heavy, and they're insanely fast. They're like turn a corner and leave a rooster tail behind it fast. I'd like to see something like that out there running. Just to get that dog, try to wear it out. Never seen nothing like it. Yeah, that may be what it is. I'm not sure what they're called. I know they're pricey. I also know they're really, really fast. I was talking, we were in the barn looking around, and as I mentioned in a previous video, the barn was built 1914 out of some first generation high dollar wood, and it's kind of in its later stages of life, and it needs repair. But it's one of those things, is it really worth spending the money on? It's so big and it's so old. And he said there's a company that will pay you to take the barn down and sell the wood, and to pay you a pretty good amount of money. And he's kind of kicking that around where you don't have to tear it down. They show up and tear it down for you and pay you to do it. I'm like, that's a pretty good system. So he's considering that here at some point in the future. He's got those heavy, heavy beams cut with old style saws, so you can really see the cut marks and stuff in it. He's had to shore up a little bit of the inside, but the walls are worn out. It's just, just time and age, and the environment up here is hard. But it's cool. Got a lot of history to it. Think about it, was built before World War I. One thing I did learn, the distance to the farm I was trying to get a plane ticket for her, and it was either Pittsburgh or Buffalo, and on a map looking at it, it looked the same distance, and I found out the hard way that Pittsburgh is twice the distance. So in the future, when I get my wife, try to get her out here, I'm going to use Buffalo. It's apparently Pittsburgh's a little bit too far away. I did get introduced to a little lady. I have a video I put out a couple of days ago. It's under my playlist called Trains. Think of all the good stuff Cracker Barrel's going to be tossing out. Yeah, Cracker Barrel. Wow. Tell you what. You ever heard the expression, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it"? They needed to leave well enough alone. That's all they needed to do. A Cracker Barrel is not a racist white person. A Cracker Barrel is literally a barrel that transported saltine crackers. That's what it is referring to. Jeez, just leave it alone. They had a good thing going, and now they're just angering people. They're not going to draw in a new crowd because they changed the logo. They're just going to piss off their regular customers. Idiots. Yeah, that's exactly common sense. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Leave it alone. If it works, leave it alone. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, I like this area up here. The little town they live in doesn't have a very big population. I was talking to my cousin. I said, "Is the population getting bigger or smaller?" He says it's staying the same. He goes, "But the older population is dying off. And there's somebody running around buying up all the houses. They're really inexpensive. They're buying them up, and he's making them Section 8 houses. So you're getting an older crowd of working people replaced by a younger crowd of non-working people." And he goes, and that's the demographic change of the town. They live miles outside of town on a farm. It doesn't affect them. But he said it's kind of sad to see that all the businesses are slowly going away, and the restaurants are going away, and everything just kind of fading out. But they're away from it, so they're not going to lose any sleep. Kind of unfortunate. Just a neat little town. Oh, my cousin's, he added 28 more acres of grapes, of vineyards, to his land. He bought this other section right down the road. And we had to bounce over the 3 sets of railroad tracks they have in the area to get on his land. And the sign said, and there's no crossing guard. Trains have to have, it says private crossing. This is private property. It's not. And I was like, how does that work? He goes, he literally owns that railroad crossing. And nobody else is supposed to go on it. And they have trail cams that catch people walking, which is no big deal. But he said it's mainly to watch out for people coming down here and going to decide, hey, I think I'll go dump my garbage, back here. But he owns his own railroad crossings, and I thought that was interesting. But while we were there, if you go under my trains playlist, there's a 7-minute video. There was a woman they introduced me to who owns the Westfield train station, which is the next town over, going towards Buffalo. And they bought the building in derelict, and it looks like something out of a movie scene. They cleaned it up and painted it and made it an event center out of it, and it's got a lot of the old stuff in it. But watch that video. It's called the Westfield Train Station Event Center or something. You could rent it out for weddings and whatnot. I seen the train that didn't have a blockage. You get a gate. But if you go on, again, under my trains playlist, it's 7 minutes long, and she rents it out for receptions and like wedding receptions and weddings. She also is an artist, and she has some art put in there, and she really made a really good appearance out of this building. And it's got a hold on a second, I have a piece of paper here. I wrote it down. It's called WestfieldTrainStation.com. See it. I think it was one of your shorts. Yeah, it might have been. But that train station is it's beautiful. You look at the signs, and the place has basically got 2 main rooms, and one says gentlemen's waiting area, the other says ladies' waiting area, because they had to separate them. I'm thinking, I know, because women can't keep their hands to themselves. But the place was open in 1904, and the locals would jump on the train to go to the big city, which is Buffalo, 60 miles away, to go shopping or whatnot, and that's what it was for. It kind of fizzled out, and in the early 70s it shut down. Apparently somebody bought the station, and stripped out recyclables, coppers and brass and bronze. And then it went into dereliction and changed hands. And I don't know how long this lady's had it. She wasn't exactly a spring chicken, but she's had it for a while. But they've rebuilt it. It's absolutely beautiful inside. It has concert scaffolding. I mean, it was awesome. If you've ever been there? Wait a minute, I gotta go around this guy. Silver. Didn't see the smallest church. No, I have not seen the smallest church. Well, now I gotta move back over again. There's a guy coming up on me quick here. Hold on a second. And I enjoyed walking through. It had the original bathrooms and everything. And you ever see one of those radiator heaters you find in old buildings? You know, you turn the handle and it just steam goes through it or whatever. They had two of those. One of them had rusted away, but one had been restored. And if you watch that video, you'll see it. If you're looking at it from above, it looks like you're looking down at a wagon wheel. It's a whole bunch of radiators side by side in a circle. I didn't even know something like that existed. And she has it in the middle of the room on one side. Real sharp looking. It's got the conductor station with a lot of the original equipment inside. And I got a kick out of going in there. And it is available at Westfield Train Station near Silver Lake, West Virginia. See the smallest church, Silver Lake. I have probably been through Silver Lake, but I don't recall looking at a church. There is a church in South Texas that's famous that has a circular staircase. They've actually done documentaries. That's not something you see a lot of anymore. Yeah, exactly. Back pre-turn of the century, maybe 1850, they built this little church, and there's a choir loft up above and behind the congregation. And they realized they didn't put in a stairwell to get to it, you know, kind of a little bit short-sighted. So they tried to hire some local carpenters to go, hey, can you come up with an idea for stairs, because the church wasn't that big and there wasn't a lot of room. And the local carpenter's like, I can't really fix this. And then one day an unknown person showed up with a carpentry box in the town and said, hey, I'm a carpenter, is there any work available? And they were like, well, yeah, talk to the church. And he went in there and he said, okay, I can build you a stairwell, but here's the rules. I don't like being watched when I work. I'll just show you the final product. They said, okie dokie. And the guy went to the church and closed the doors. And nobody ever saw the guy again. But they would see light, lanterns on inside the church. And he was in there for a while. And then one day, the church door was wide open and the guy was gone. And if you look this up, you can Google Texas church plus circular stairway, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And this guy made those twisty, windy stairs. He made that off this. There's no handrail. There's no center post. It's just circular. And this is way before you had computers. And it circles up. It lines up perfectly with the top row. So you just let your hands swing at your side. You follow it up, and you're up there. And they found out later there's no nails in it. It's just puzzle pieced together. And the guy disappeared. He didn't ask to get paid. He didn't announce it. He just opened the doors and left. And they never figured out who the guy was. And they go, well, at least we'll go pay his bill. And they went to the local sawmills and said, did this guy get the wood here? They were like, no. And they went and looked at it. In more recent times, they did a DNA test on it. And they found out the wood is from Eastern Europe somewhere. So it's made out of a wood you can't find. And it's put together with no nails from a guy they can't find. So if you're bored, look up Texas church plus circular stairwell, and you'll see what it is. And it's one of those mysteries they never quite solved on that. And it's a tourist attraction. They eventually put handrails on it, and then in recent times they don't want people on it anymore because it's stolen. But it's kind of cool looking, especially considering he did it all by hand. Yeah, it's a spiral staircase, but a spiral staircase is around a pipe, like a pole. This thing doesn't have a center. It's like a 10-inch gap. You can look down the middle, and it's just a freestanding circular stairs. And there's pictures of church members standing on each level like a group photo. So it'll hold weight. But look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about. And like I said, in more modern times, they put a handrail on it. And now it's just, they don't want anybody on it, period. But it's just an amazing masterpiece of craftsmanship from a guy who didn't get paid. And they don't even know who it was. You're talking about small churches in Nevada. Property taxes are super duper low in Nevada because the state makes all their money off taxing the casinos, basically. They had a rule that said if you had a church on your property, it dropped your taxes to basically nothing. When I was out there, I noticed everybody that had a big house had a church. It might be 4 feet square, but they had a church somewhere on their property with a name on it. So everybody goes, yep, got a church. You know, find a loophole in the taxes. Oh, there we go. What are we doing for gas mileage? 21.7. Our Lady of Pines. Looks to be the smallest church at 48. I mean, like an actual church. What's the dimensions on it? How small are we talking? I got a friend of mine. He's Mexican, and he said a big thing in Mexican culture is you own a ranch. You don't have a farm. It's a ranch, and it's huge. You don't live in a house. You live on a ranch. And he said he had a friend of his that had a sign on his house on the roof that said Rancho Grande, and the sign actually overhung the property lines on either side. Because, you live in a small house. Lady of the Pines. There's a Sprinter. He's got Illinois tags. That guy right there, that's us. He's doing what I'm doing. See a generic white van out here. Look for the license plate. He's probably from another state. That's the Mercedes Sprinter. That's the big fancy one. Nothing wrong with it. It's just really expensive to buy and really expensive to do maintenance on. 11 by 60 on the inside. I know it was 6 small pews and 3. Oh, that's cool. Now, this church was small in Texas, but it wasn't that small. I mean, I have never seen it with my own eyes. I've seen pictures, but it was way bigger than that. Yeah, it's pretty small, 11 by 16. That's serving a very small community. Check the radios. Yeah, I went, my cousin put a really nice porch on the back of the house facing north towards Lake Erie, and I spent pretty much every evening and every morning sitting out there. It's this beautiful view off the side of this downhill slope across the vineyards, and I enjoyed myself out there every night, talking on the phone or just sitting there and throwing the dog, the ball for the dog for his endless laps of never getting tired. But there's one angle from right on that line where you can see the water line, and then I'm looking over to the left and I'm seeing all these little pinpricks of light like on this dark line over here, and I was kind of getting concerned because that's way above the water line. I'd never seen that before. And I actually called my cousin out and said, dude, is this, what is that? That doesn't look friendly. And he said, that's just an illusion you get from a reflection off the city over there under certain conditions. It'll show those lights, and it looked like something was going down. And he said it's kind of unusual to see, and I'm like, good, because I didn't like it. But I had fun hanging out at their house. I grabbed one of my videos is about it's called Lake Erie Rock Beach, and I collected a small little clump of these rocks. They were a little different, the ones I found. Nice and smooth, the water hitting them. Kind of an unusual place. Back in the 1950s, yeah. There was a guy that wrote a book. I don't remember his name, but his book came out in 1973. It was called A Walk Across America. And he said, due to all the political upheaval in the world, which if you think about, it just seems like no matter where you're standing at what time in history, there's some kind of political upheaval going on. So he was upset about the political upheaval of 1973. And my best buddy lives up by the lake here. Yeah, it's a nice area. I like it up here. It's old-fashioned, it's country. And I enjoy it. But that guy stopped at little towns along the way, and he worked at sawmills and worked on farms and kind of worked his way across. There was a dude back in 22, the wife and I went on a trip to Key West. We flew to Miami, rented a little convertible car off of Turo, and it went down to Key West, which we enjoyed it, but the drive down there, the first half of the drive in the Florida Keys is so industrial and so business-oriented and traffic lights, you can't see water half the drive down there. It's the first time you see water. Key West was okay. It's never going to be on my, oh my God, we have to go back list, but we enjoyed our trip. And one of the things we did down there was a bicycle tour. A guy escorts you around the town and shows you, it's got some interesting history, but the guy that was leading the tour was the ultimate kickback. The guy was probably in his early 40s, did not take any aspect of life seriously. I mean, this guy was just as laid back as you could be. And during the course of the conversation, we found out the guy had walked over an 18-month period. He had walked from Seattle to Key West. I mean, look at the map and look how far that is. And he just went do and walked down there. And now he does bicycle tours of Key West. I said, okie dokie. And one of the things going on down there that completely caught me off guard is apparently there was a naval base. I've only been down as far as Tennessee. Been down North Carolina because I got lost. Oh, what state are you in currently, by the way? Something this guy told us is 1972, the naval base closed down there. And by 1975, the industry, the reason to be there kind of went away. He said you could buy a house in Key West in 1975 for $1,500. That same house today, unrestored, is worth about $3 or $4 million. Upper near Morgantown. That's where I was hanging out. I was in Morgantown a couple weekends ago, and I hung out with a guy I was talking about YouTube, and he started a YouTube channel because of our conversation. He's called Expedited Journey, and he's got a few videos out. But that's funny, because that's where I spent 3 days sitting there in the shade tree at the Pilot, hanging out. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, I'm sorry. My brain, I've been off frequency here for the last few days. That's where I bumped into the woman checking the oil on her car that had no oil in it. Like, none. That was, yeah. Yeah, that was the place. Yeah, but look, that guy's channel is Expedited Journey, and he's just getting started out and stuff. The near older you get, that happens more. CRS happens more often. But the stuff you hold on to, the stuff you remember that you wish you could shake out of your brain because you don't need it, stays. I can tell you in 1977, radio station KIKI in Honolulu, Hawaii had a request line, if you remember those, and their phone number was 521-8383. Why I remember that, I have no idea, but that information is in my head. But you asked me what town I was in yesterday, you're going to get a blank stare. Oh, geez. Yeah, I tell you what, at 41, I remember back when I was 41. It's going to get worse. They say life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer to the end you get, the faster it goes. Yeah, them birthdays start coming around faster. You know, once you're getting used to being 41, tomorrow or next week you're going to be 46. Trust me on that. And high school kids look younger and younger every year. I think at this point, I look at a high school kid and they're like 7. Of course, when I went to high school, it was easier because the world history book was a brochure, like a little pamphlet. Yeah, they do. Something I keep telling people, and I know a lot of people that wait to retire to go start doing stuff. Wait till they retire to travel, to enjoy life. You know, like, no. We started traveling years ago because something may happen between now and then. You may physically not be able to go. I knew a guy not too long ago. He was going to push to the maximum retirement. Oh my God, I'm getting maximum. So he went to 68. I'm going to 62. He went to 68 to retire. He lasted 89 days. Heart attack dead. I'm like, yeah, no. Time to start doing stuff. Do it now. Don't wait. Like I said, 57 years old. 2 years ago, it's the first time this has happened. But 2 years ago, a kid I grew up with named Mark Guymon. We were really good friends when we were younger. Married, 3 daughters, sent them all off to college. His last one had a graduation. He just went through a college graduation. They got back. Mark took his dog for a walk. His wife and him have huge travel plans. They're going here, they're going there now. The kids are all gone. It's your career, because you'll be operating opposite to the rest of the planet. Give yourself a timeline of where you want to be and the type of work you enjoy, but try to find out what you do for fun and make somebody pay you to do it. That's the best job to have. And make somebody pay you to do it. That's the best job to have. You know, some people spend their lives chasing money, doing something that makes them miserable. And people do something to enjoy it. Oh, that's easy to say. You know, and I would say you're crazy. Go after the money. And as I get older, it dawns on me that doing something that's a little stressful definitely has its advantages. But set a goal, set a vacation goal, set a work goal, but start planning out the future. My wife and I like to go on mini trips, little short vacations, and I would come home on Friday afternoon, and we live about 200 miles from Corpus Christi, and they have an aquarium, a really big aquarium down there that's noticeably better than the one in Los Angeles, surprisingly. And I came walking in the house, and I said, Pac, we're going to the aquarium in San Antonio. And Corpus Christi. And she goes, okay. And 10 minutes later, we're walking out the door. We get in the car, and we went down there, and the place was really nice, a really good setup, fun to walk through. They have a petting zoo. You can actually pet a manta ray and a stingray, and you can inadvertently touch a flamingo while you're feeding them and stuff. It was a neat experience. And then we came home Sunday night late, and that part of the country has a lot of bugs, a lot of mosquitoes, so our car was killing all the bugs going down the road, and we have a membership to a car wash that closes at 9 o'clock. We came to the car wash at 2 wheels at 8:45 at night, whipped in there, and they scraped everything off and cleaned the car. We got home, our car was clean, we ran in the house. They said, okay, that was a fun way to spend the weekend. You go on vacations but still don't see the world compared to something like what you do. Well, I've been around a little bit here in the last few years, about the last 3-4 years. You just got to schedule it. And as far as the price of doing it, the further out you plan your trips, the better the price. If you wait to the last second, you're going to get raked over the coals. We've got 2 Mexico trips. Puerto Vallarta was awesome. Tulum, which is south of Cancun, you can keep that whole peninsula as far as I'm concerned. We did L.A. to go to the MASH film location, which if you're old enough to remember that was kind of cool. A couple of Colorado trips, the Key West one, and we were up here a few years ago in the New York area with the wife. I mean, just they're not big trips. You know, you can find a cheaper way to do them. I got a doc. I've got to get him. All right, I'm here. I'll be here for a while. Nice talking with you. Gives me topics, which helps. Whoa, here we go. Beautiful weather today. Doctor's appointment. Uh-oh. So we're cruising. I love it when the sun's behind me because it seems like in the mornings it's always in my face. Traffic is light. Still working on this channel. I had somebody promo my channel, and he described it as being a modest YouTube channel, and I was maybe a little offended by that. But I like doing it. This entertains me going down the road. Let's see here, where's my fan? There we go. This entertains me, gives me something to do. I listen to podcasts, satellite radio I listen to. That'll keep me going for periods of time. I sometimes listen to YouTube in the background, but I usually go about an hour at a time, unless something weird's going down. I haven't been down into Atlanta recently, but if I get a drive through there at night, I will absolutely stream that, because the main city, when you're cutting through the middle of it, it's interesting. The buildings are lit up, and the underpasses have neon lights. It just looks cool. Uh-oh, state line coming up. And that's about a 30-mile gap across Pennsylvania into Ohio. So there's Ohio. Got a honk. Hold on. Tradition. Okay. Now we're in Ohio. Can you feel the difference? Me neither. My mother collects road maps. So I go into all these rest areas. I go into all the rest areas and I grab a road map or two for her. But I think I've got a handful of these, of the Ohio ones, which I've already given her. I'm not stopping. Got a friend of mine who lives here. See this sign coming up? It says exit whatever, then it says food and gas, and then they'll have one that'll say lodging, and the next one said attractions. And my buddy from Ohio sent me a picture of one that said attractions, and it was blank. And he said that pretty much sums it up. Sorry, eating a banana. Doo-doo. So what I got from this trip is I really enjoyed hanging out with my cousin and his family and their friends. Extremely disappointed that my wife didn't make it out. Stop. And now we're heading back to work. And I don't know how long I'm going to be on. I'm going to see if I can get a ride back to Texas here at some point. Getting to Laredo runs pretty easy. Getting out of Laredo is basically impossible, but if I can get there, I can just deadhead a little. Check the mileage here. 22.5. Where'd it go? I need to put a little bit of air in my right front tire. It's got a slight little pull to the right. out with the cousin and his wife. We went and watched the movie Airplane from 1980 with Leslie Nielsen. And as you watch the film, you look in the background of all the people, and you'll start recognizing famous people that became famous later were all the background players. So if you get a few minutes, go watch that film. Do you remember Breaking Bad? The guy Mike with the shaved head that deadpanned everything. If you watch the movie, he's in it. He's one of the air traffic controllers in the movie. So his tenure in acting goes way back. I mean, that's literally 45 years ago. Extreme Eastern Ohio is what we're in right now. Ooh. I was by the head shed here a week ago when I changed my oil in the parking lot, and I'm down to 87%. That is all the oil I have on board. So if I get into a circumstance where I need an oil change, I'm going to have to take it to an oil change place. And I hate doing it. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, I'll just go to Wally World or something, buy my own. I hate spending all that money, giving somebody $70 or $80 labor. .3 miles per gallon. This is extreme Eastern Ohio, I-80, I-90, depending. We are about 45 miles outside of Cleveland, heading that way. I'm not going to Cleveland. I'm going to be turning off to the southwest when I get up here close. It's going to move me down a little more towards the middle of the state, and then we'll continue on westbound. One of the nice features of new GPS is you can literally tell it to avoid toll roads. And as long as it's not taking me too far out of my way, I pretty much operate that way. I don't feel the need to give them a bonus to drive on a road that's been paid for generations. I saw a black and white picture the other day, and it was a bunch of people standing around in jean jackets and jeans. And it was a line of people, and it was for the Star Wars movie, and it said, "Hey, look, it's Grandma and Grandpa lining up to see Star Wars." And I'm not sure what I think about that statement. New York gas is expensive because they tax the piss out of it. And was told Pennsylvania gas was pricey, but I didn't stop. I don't know, but I'm going to keep looking. I'm full. I don't need gas, but I want to check because a lot of these places will have their price on a big old sign you can see from the road. That's what I'm looking for. See what they're doing up here. If you do a lot of driving, or you do any amount of driving. I would recommend using Lucas fuel. It's injector cleaner, 310. All right, 3. Let's see here. Lucas. It's a syrupy, little skinny, tall, real skinny little bottle. The best place to buy it cheapest would be Walmart. It's like the automotive section. It's like $6, $5, depending. It's hard to tell what they're charging. And you pour it in your tank, and you put gas on top of it. I wouldn't just pour it in a full tank because you got to mix it a little bit. And it's got something on it that sticks to the carbon buildup in your engine and strips off, so you get a clean squirt of fuel. Because if it's off a little bit, it's not very efficient, your vehicle. And it's just a buildup. It happens. You don't have to do it a lot. I drive a lot, so it's a little different for me. But if your regular car, put one in there every 6 months or something. Getting better gas mileage is kind of a nickel and dime game. It's not. There's no magic switch you can do, and there's always people selling some new snake oil magical fuel saving. You've got guy. Oh, you put this selling magnets that you wrap around your fuel line, and you could buy one, but if you want the most savings, you buy 3 of them, and you put these 3 magnets in it. It aligns the molecules in your fuel, and it goes through, and it straightens everything, and it makes it more. There's nothing in fuel that's magnetic, nothing. But they've been selling fuel magnets since the 1950s, And then they had this crap they were selling here a few years ago. It was the tornado. You put it in your air inlet, going into your engine, and the air fuel mixture would go through it. It would spin it, and somehow, some way, would magically produce power and make the engine faster. And yeah, right, buddy. And then they make these little chips you put in your car under your USB port or whatever they call it. You plug in, and this little circuit. Oh yeah, you just plug this in, and it does this, that, and the next thing. And they're $70, and somebody bought one of those little plug-in things for your electrical port, and he looked at it up close, and the circuitry. Electronic circuitry has numbers on it. It has numbers and names to identify what it is and how much power goes through it and blah, blah, blah. And he's looking at it. There's no numbers. There's nothing on it. And if you look real close electronically, none of it's actually attached to anything. It's just decorative. But for $69, you can buy this little plastic plug, and plug it into your car and convince yourself you're getting better gas mileage. Here's how this works. If somebody invented some magical device that gave your vehicle more mileage and or more power, it would be standard equipment on every car being manufactured today. Every manufacturer would be buying them and installing them. And when that argument comes up, the naysayers always go, the car manufacturers don't really care about mileage. They're just doing the bare minimum. No, they're really trying to keep customers and make people happy is what they're trying to do. And if somebody invented some magical thingy that could give you more power and or better gas mileage, I can assure you they would be using it. And they're always looking for it. And when they do find one, they're not going to, you'll know about it. You can only squeeze so much power out of a molecule of fuel. I know ethanol works, but ethanol is actually less powerful. And one of the cars I owned a few years ago had a flex fuel, meaning it would run on, E85 as they call it. And at the time, E85 was like 15 cents a gallon less. And just for fun, I tried a tank full of it. Just try it out. And I drove the car, and honestly, the car drove exactly the same. I felt no difference in the way the power. It's a 4-cylinder car. But I lost 25% of my mileage because corn fuel doesn't produce as much power. Ethanol. So the car was actually working a little bit harder or having to inject more fuel to keep the same performance. So that's just something to think about. Got everybody and their brother coming up behind me in a hurry right now. Where are you going? speed limit is 70, and I'm doing my traditional 62 right now. Trying to stay out of everybody's way. Ooh. Sleeping in this van's a little rough. I do it for periods of time. It was kind of nice sleeping in a real bed, be able to stretch out. And then I beat on my cousin's washer and dryer. As I was leaving. So that helped. So I got clean clothes, a full tank of gas, a relatively recent oil change. Place here to run for a while. This van currently has 155,000 miles on it, and I bought it in January. It had 109, and I started driving in March. So he's getting his miles built up. Good looking. Now, Lake Erie is part of the Great Lakes, and it's the largest area of fresh water in the world, right in there. And there was a time, there was a fishing industry out there way back, and they overfished the Pequot out of it and pretty much killed it. I mean, you could still recreationally fish, but as far as netting massive quantities, they killed the fish off a long time ago. Back in like the 40s and 50s, which is kind of stupid, but that's what people do when they're not paying attention to the environment. I have a couple of videos here shot a few days ago, and they're under one of my playlists, Vacation or whatever, where I went down to the water line, and they actually built a little walkway out of the same material they built the Stairway to Heaven in Hawaii out of to get down to the water. And it's not sandy, it's rock, and it's kind of interesting to mosey around the area. These rocks are all polished and smooth and perfectly flat. It's just kind of odd, but I liked it. I like walking around down there. And if you've ever dug around, this pops up on the news occasionally. In World War II, they put in Hawaii, on top of these old dormant volcanoes, they put up these walkways. Some were for observation towers, and there was one place they had walkways went up this ridge, then you go across this huge valley, and there was a walkway up the other one, and they ran a cable across there, and that was the receiver for radio transmissions. Because I always thought antennas got their range by going up, up in the air, but they don't. They go parallel. And they ran a copper cable between these two hills. I don't know if it was 100 yards or a half a mile, but it was a big gap. And they could receive radio transmissions around the South Pacific during the war. And I guess after the war, they took cable down and just kind of left the handrails and the walkways. It's literally called the Stairway to Heaven because it goes up into the clouds. And people would go up and walk on them. It was just a touristy thing. Well, in 1987, they officially closed them because they weren't doing maintenance on them and they were getting derelict. So they said, okay, you can't go up there, which everybody ignored. And people continue to this day to go up there, even though they've actually removed big chunks of them. People still go up there and run around. And when I was a kid, my dad was an airline pilot, and at the time he was flying out of Honolulu, so he had a apartment or a condo, I don't remember which it was, in Honolulu, and he had friends that owned houses and sailboats and a lot of, guys that were doing well, and one of his friends owned a beachfront house that was the shape of a V, big giant V facing the water. And I remember you could walk under the porch. You could go outside to go to all the different rooms. Just like you didn't walk interior like a normal house, you'd walk out. It had a big old porch that you could walk the entire length of the house outside and go into individual rooms. And at the time, the what's it? Remember Magnum PI, that show? The house was actually next door to the villa used for the movie, but at the time it was unknown because that came out in '81. And another house that belonged to a friend, ironically, the next door neighbor across the street was Tom Selleck, but Tom Selleck was kind of an unknown person at the time. And I remember seeing him and just waving and saying hi. And when I was, a little kid, he was a nobody. But then all that happened, so it was weird that we had two places that were related to oops, what was going on there. I had a point in talking about this, but I just can't remember what it was. But, oh yeah, one of my dad's friends was a guy who owned, I don't remember his name, but he owned Tropical Rent-A-Car. And he had a house that was inland quite a ways, inland from the beach. And my dad was there hanging out. The guy had I don't know what you call it, a cockatoo, a giant parakeet, a giant bird. I don't even know what you call them. It was big, and it was freaking loud. That thing would scream out and scare the living bejesus out of me, but it would go off. But we were in this guy's house, and of course my dad's hanging out with him. We're kids. We're running around outside, my brother and I. I remember in his backyard, it was a very tropical environment, and there were some trees out back with bushes, and there were some old cars parked on his property. It was real foggy, and these cars were like from the 1930s, and they were, worn out derelict sitting there. And I remember seeing them sitting there, and they kind of registered. At the time, that would make the cars 40 years old, which today would be like, who cares, 40 years old? But 40 years old from the late 1970s is kind of a different era of vehicles. But we went kicking around in this huge piece of real estate this guy had. And we walked around back, and the volcanoes, the old dormant volcanoes in Hawaii are steep. And they're covered in shrubs. They're covered in moss and something growing. And we walked out there, and there's the volcano in front of us. And when I say it's in front of us, think of walking up to a random wall and just stopping where the wall stopped. I mean, boom, it's right in front of your face. It was like, that's how sudden we beat this. We could look up, and this wall went up into the fog right above us. We couldn't see very far. And it was just kind of weird, like, where'd this come from? Because we couldn't see it when we were driving up to that guy's house. So my brother and I were just being kids. We started walking along this steep wall, which had ridges in it, like grooves, so it kind of like a wave, but it's going up instead of parallel. And then we came to a staircase, kind of a cross between a ladder and a super steep staircase. And in hindsight, it was made out of aluminum. And we stopped, and you look up, and it disappears over our head. It goes like 50, 60 feet, and it's gone. So, being kids, we immediately start climbing it, and we went up. We went quite a ways up this ladder staircase, and we're walking around in a cloud. We're in the fog, climbing, we're yelling at each other, where does this go? We don't know. We're just going. Keep climbing, keep climbing, keep climbing. All of a sudden, it stops, and we're on top of a ridge, which you can't see. You just see the railing goes left and right. It's now level, so we turned right, which was downhill a little bit. And we started running down this thing. And we're basically jogging, and we're in a cloud, which is like super thick fog with unknown around us, and all you can see is the footpath, the grading, and the railing, and we probably ran 200 yards as this thing went left and right, and then we stopped, and it dawned on us, there is a distinct possibility we will never be able to find our way back because there is no reference point other than this white distance around us. There's nothing above, nothing on the side, just this railing and a little bit of real estate underneath the floor mats, the floor grading. And this is in an era, nobody had cameras, nobody had smartphones, but then What a neat thing to film. I would have had a copy of that running around inside of a cloud, because it literally was a cloud. And we zigzagged around. We were up there for a while, and then we had to go back, and we had to go, okay, now how do we get back? Butterfly, what's up? Hey, how you doing? We are in extreme eastern Ohio going westbound, which is why the sun is wonderfully behind us. And we are heading towards Cleveland. We're going to bend down southwest from Cleveland and go to Mount Vernon. I got two very heavy pallet pickup, 2,400 pounds, unknown dimensions. I hope they fit. And then I'm going to Liberty, Liberty, Indiana, which is northwest of Indy. It's a straight east-west run. We're just out here doing our thing. Spent a weekend at my cousin's house on the family farm, and my wife didn't make it because United Airlines doesn't know where they park their planes. So it's been a little rough. But I was talking about the Stairway to Heaven in Hawaii. My brother and I were up there for quite a while, and if my dad was yelling our name, we couldn't have heard it. And then we worked our way back and found the stairwell down, which I don't recall passing another down stairwell, but that's the first one we saw, and we're going down and thinking, I hope this is the right one, because you can't see. We got back down. I don't remember what happened after that. So my brother and I got to walk on the Stairway to Heaven before they decommissioned it. Like I said, they closed it in 87, but then people kept going on it. But then they literally pulled it out, which I think is terrible. Because it was kind of a neat little thing. They should have left that alone, because people really enjoyed going up on there. I imagine on a sunny day it would have been a fun view. We are passing through the town of Geneva, wherever that is. So one of the things I was helping my cousin with yesterday was the vineyards have these big wooden posts that the wire attached to and the vines hang off of it. And the posts that go in the middle of the line are pointed, and the ones that go on the end are just big fat bottom posts. And he has an attachment on the side of his tractor that has a giant battering ram. And you can take this 4.5-inch diameter piece of wood that's got a flat bottom and just knock the piss out of it, and it'll go into the ground. And I got to admit, I was impressed that you could just go thunk, 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 and it goes into the ground. You go, well, that's, wow. But I had to help him repair some of the vines with the wires, and I got to learn the system. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of an interesting thing. It's going on forever. The grapes, the vineyards right by my grandparents' house, well, my cousin's house now, but the vineyards that are right next door, my mother was talking to her about it. And like I was saying, there used to be cattle in that area. They had cattle. I don't know how far back it goes, but every indicator was they had cattle. They had cows and a barn for them and whatnot. But the vineyards to the east of the house is 4 acres of grapes. My mother in high school talked to her friend who had a great uncle who talked about this, and he said those vineyards were observed them being planted in 1906. So that's how long those vines have been in the ground doing their thing. I don't think they reseed them. I think they just leave them. They run them for a certain number of years, and then they have to stop and leave them alone for a year to kind of rekindle their energy. I don't know the technical term, but they leave them alone, and then they go back to using them. It's like you exhaust the soil or something. But they were planted in 1906, and they've been producing grapes ever since, which I think is kind of awesome. And back in the day, every farmer had a grape picker, used to do it by hand, and then they had the machine that goes along and shakes the vines and gets them off, and everybody owned that machinery. But now, very few people own it, and they just contract somebody who owns the machinery that comes over and does it, because it's just more economical than holding on to a multi-$100,000 piece of equipment used once a year. Because I noticed he didn't have a grape picker anymore. They sold theirs years ago. And we used to have 2 3-wheelers on the property growing up, and they were old 3-wheelers. I believe the yellow one was a 1967 model, which I believe is the first year they ever sold something like that on the market. I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, at the time it didn't dawn on me, but looking back, that's kind of cool having an original 3-wheeler. I mean, they were terrible as far as, you know, if you're going too fast over a bump, you're going to die, but just puddling around on the ranch or on the farm was kind of cool, especially when you're a kid. Helmets, blah. Safety glasses, blah. You just ride it. They used to have a woodchuck problem. A woodchuck is like a very large gopher, and they dig huge holes in the ground, and it affects the grape posts. It'll actually knock a post over. So if you had the opportunity, you'd kill them. You keep a 22 handy and you'd shoot them because you didn't want them around. And somebody introduced some wolves to the area, and now the population of woodchucks is pretty much gone. This time I used to see them as a kid. They were like running around. You'd see them. But this trip, I saw one running across a clearing the whole time I was here. Other than that, I didn't see any holes, and I didn't see any other ones minus that one. So I guess the woodchuck population's been more or less decimated by the wolf population. There was the Colorado equivalent to a woodchuck is called a marmot. You go up into the mountains and you'll see them. Again, big fuzzy woodchuck, big fuzzy squirrel, big fuzzy groundhog. And back when I was a teenager, we went hiking to Long's Peak. Long's Peak. We would hike up a mountain, go across this thing called the boulder field. It's a huge rock, big, massive rocks. You jump rock to rock. Then you go up this really steep incline rocks, and you get to the top of Pikes Peak, and it's 14,000 feet. It was just something everybody did at least once. And we were up there with some friends, and their kids were with us, and their kids were 7 or 8 years old. And I'm sitting on a rock, and somebody brings out, take a break, drink some water. He opened up a bag, a little container of grapes, and I'm holding the container in my lap, and the kids are sitting. One's sitting on my right, one's sitting on my left, and I hand a grape to the kid on my right, and the kid on my left kind of pokes my sleeve, and I hand her one, and then the kid on my right, I hand him one, the kid on my left pokes my sleeve, I hand him a second one, and then the kid on my left walks up from my right side, is when I look to my left, and there's a marmot sitting next to me, just sitting on the rock, and he's poking my sleeve, going, hand it over, buddy. This giant furry thing. Hey, well, you're handing out grapes, and I'm here, so scared the crap out of me. But I'm guessing he'd seen people once or twice before. I got one person left. I guess I'm boring everybody to death. Eastern Ohio. This is what it looks like early in the morning, going westbound. pause up. Getting 22.7 miles per gallon. I can feel I'm getting knocked around by some wind, so I think I have a slight headwind going on right now. Whoa. This is a nice time of day to drive. The traffic is minimal. Trying to hoping the wife would have an opportunity to check out this area up here, get her 2 cents on the concept of moving here. But again, because of the airline, she didn't make it. She didn't make it up here, so we're going to have to kick that can down the road. So I am tentatively trying to schedule to get her up here November during hunting season. Alright, I have officially lost everybody. I'm going to call this off.